time. My name is Greg Paul. I'm actually here on another matter, but I happen to be the Knights' immediate neighbor, and the road that accesses their property crosses our land. And my wife and I support their application.
Okay, and your last name, sir?
Paul, P-A-U-L.
Okay, thank you. Well, thank you for that input. If there are no other members of the public who wish to make comment, I will close the public portion of the meeting and bring the application before the committee for any questions or comments. And we'll begin with Member Matthews.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was trying to beat Mr. Jarvis, but I guess that's not a competition this time.
Jill DeMosh.
Mr. Crackett, can you explain to me, the variance you're asking for is from 46 square meters to 92 square meters, roughly, right?
Correct.
But where does this 16-meter setback come into play? I thought we had to be 20 meters setback, but I don't see anything in the motion on that.
So if there were not acquired rights running with this land for just over a 10-meter setback from the water's edge for the detached garage, you might not be considering this application today. That being said, there are acquired rights for a detached garage within just over 10 meters of the water's edge. And so while the proposed detached garage, if it were set back 20 meters, would actually be smaller than the maximum size that our bylaw allows, because they do have acquired rights to be up to just over 10 meters from the water's edge, they do have the right to continue to be legal non-compliant. In this case, they're reducing that non-compliance by moving further away from the water's edge by a significant amount, but they are increasing the size, and that's why they're here asking for an approval under Section 45.2 of the Planning Act.
So if it was just a cabin, it would have to be the 20-meter setback, is that correct?
No, the sleeping cabin actually had acquired rights as well to be within the front yard. However, neither of the existing buildings had acquired rights to exceed the maximum height. And so that's why there was a great deal of discussion prior to bringing this to the committee. And fortunately, there will be minimal rock blasting within 20 meters of the water's edge. The designer has confirmed through the agent to me that there's no need to apply for a blasting permit. And so the benefit of working with the topography in this case is not coming at the expense of a great deal of blasting. That being said, there may be some, but it apparently is less than 4 cubic meters within 20 meters of the water's edge.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
Okay. Are there any further questions? And I'm looking online. I see we have Councillor Graziano. Please go ahead.
Yes, and thank you thank you, Chair. A quick question with regards to the drawing here. I am seeing a darker shaded area, which I believe is identified as a proposed sleeping cabin upper level, and this is on the top, what looks like it's some kind of surveyed drawing. And then surrounding that is a 20-meter setback zone. I'm assuming that the sleeping cabin is within that 20-meter setback. It's simply the garage that is less than that. Is that correct? So it's the 16 meters at the very edge of the garage, but in fact, the sleeping cabin, which is above the garage, is in or within that 20-meter setback zone. Is that correct, Jeff?
Yes.
Great. Thank you for confirming that. I just wanted to make sure. Lastly, and forgive me, it is my first inaugural meeting here on COA today, but I do want to make sure that it has been identified that there are some concerns with septic that would be resolved once a minor variance is approved. Is that correct? Through our building department?
So again, as the agent said, and he certainly is welcome to add more, but yes, so the septic issues, I've been led to believe by discussions with Kaylee that this is just a matter of information and that there may not be septic issues. And certainly what Ryan said in his presentation was that they will be examining those matters before making a building permit application. And so I would expect they would be providing the appropriate information to building staff to make any determinations. But if Ryan wants to add anything, I invite him to do so.
Thank you. Seeing no further hands or questions being presented, I will read the resolution. It is moved by Member Rivet, seconded by Member Predko. Moved by Member Matthews and seconded by Member Predko. Be it resolved that the Committee of Adjustment for the Township of Georgian Bay grants the minor variance proposed by application A24-07 regarding the subject lands municipally known as 108 Island Drive, pursuant to subsection 45(2) of the Planning Act, to vary subsection 411AI of the zoning bylaw so that the detached garage may increase from 46.2 square meters to 92.9 square meters ground floor area. The decision is subject to the following conditions, being 1, that the owner provide a property tax certificate or correspondence from the Township Financial Services indicating that all property taxes have been paid up to date with respect to the subject lands in this decision, and that the owner execute a minor variance agreement satisfactory to the township for the purposes of discussing in the township staff report regarding application A24-07. And 3, that the owner cooperates with the township at the cost of the owner to register the executed minor variance agreement on title to the subject lands for application A24-07. 4, that the proposed development of the subject lands be substantially and proportionately in conformity with the dimensions as set out in the application and sketches submitted and approved by the committee. And finally, that a building permit for the development proposed by application A24-07 be obtained within 3 years from the final and binding date of the decision of the Committee of Adjustment for the township. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Thank you. We are unanimous. The motion is carried and the application is approved.
Thank you very much, committee. In case you were keeping track, 2.5 meters of snow now in Bracebridge. We got another 6 inches last night. So I'm not sure who's winning.
Our next
Have a great day.
minor variance application A24-57 for 40 Murphy's Road. To the planner, please.
Through the chair, the subject property has an area of 2,792 square meters or 0.69 acres and a frontage of 30.35 meters on Gibson Lake. A legal non-complying detached dwelling and shed occupy the lands. A shared driveway from Murphy Road runs through the middle of the property. The lands are designated waterfront within the district and township official plans with high to very high archaeological potential and a moderate wildfire hazard rating. The shoreline contains type 2 fish habitat and the subject lands are located within a deer wintering area. The property is zoned shoreline residential type 1. The purpose and effect of the application is to seek relief from the zoning bylaw to facilitate the construction of a detached garage in the rear yard. The zoning bylaw states that accessory buildings located on lots zoned shoreline residential should not be located closer than 5 meters to a side lot line, whereas the applicant is proposing a minimum setback of 1.2 meter and 1.5 meters. Across all residential zones, an accessory building located in a rear yard shall not be located closer than 4 meters to the rear lot line, whereas the applicant is proposing a minimum setback of 1.2 meters. The garage also increases the lot coverage from 9.65% or 259.6 square meters to 12.49% or 348.8 square meters, whereas a maximum lot coverage of 7% or 195.4 square meters is permitted. The proposed garage will be 1 story with a height of 4.5 meters and a floor area of 89.2 square meters. To confirm, the garage complies with the maximum permitted floor area and height. The garage will be on relatively flat lands located at the top of a hill. The proposed location of the detached garage eliminates the need for blasting the rock wall that abuts the shared driveway, as shown on the displayed photo with the parked vehicles. The intent of limiting lot coverage to 7% in the SR1 zone is to prevent overdevelopment, to protect the natural heritage, and uphold the character of the waterfront designation by retaining the overall low density of built form and development. The appearance of the property from Gibson Lake will not change with the addition of the detached garage, considering its location in the rear yard and presence of dense mature vegetation. The applicant is unable to achieve compliance with side and rear yard requirements due to the reversed pie shape of the property, the presence of granite rock, and topographical restraints. Privacy will not be a concern for neighboring property owners, as the building is limited to 1 story with no windows, and there are no habitable buildings in the vicinity. The topography of the land indicates stormwater runoff will run down towards the center of the property. The committee can either approve or deny any one of the requested variances. The committee can defer the application to a later date if additional information is required to come to a decision. Planning staff have completed a detailed analysis outlined in the associated report and are recommending approval subject to conditions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bonfer. Madam Secretary, has there been correspondence in this application?
One letter was received from Kelly Nicholson, Chief Building Official, stating that there is no record of existing system, that there is no living accommodation or plumbing allowed in the garage.
Thank you. If the applicant is present or online and wishes to address the committee, please step forward. Okay, are you the applicant? Yes. Okay. Well, oh, hello. In case there are some questions, we can put them to you and see where we go from there. All right. Is there any member of the public present that wishes to address this application? Seeing none present or online, I will close the public portion of the meeting and bring the application before the committee for any questions or comments. And we will begin with Member Matthew.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Shania, just curious on the lot coverage. What it says that it's permitted to a maximum of 7%. Is that where it sits now, or is it over that? I'm having a tough time that a relatively small garage is pumping it up so much from lot coverage.
Through the chair, currently the lot is at a coverage of 9.65% as opposed to 7%, and that's due to the dwelling on the lot as well as the deck attached to such and a shed on the property.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any further questions or comments? Seeing none, I will read.
You're let me speak, Chair.
Okay. Member Predko, please.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. Just a quick, and I think this is half of the question that Member Matthews just asked. We're applying Section 45(2) of the Planning Act to this application, and as opposed to 45(1), and I'm assuming that's because it's legal non-conforming. The legal non-conforming status is because of the lot coverage that it already had in place. Shania, is that correct?
Through the chair, to clarify, we're applying the 4 test under 45(1). They're going above and beyond what the current zone permits, further increasing the issue of non-compliance, and then they are also asking for relief for additional provisions from the zoning bylaw, in this case, the setbacks.
Okay. Thank you. I just thought in the report that it only was dealing with 45(2), but thank you for that clarification.
Okay, thank you very much. Any further questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, I will read the resolution. It is moved by Member Schmidt, seconded by Member Matthews. Be it resolved that the Township of Georgian Bay Committee of Adjustment hereby approves the following variances requested under minor variance application A24-57. One, a detached garage having a setback of 1.2 meters and 1.5 meters from the side lot lines, whereas section 4.1.7A requires a minimum side yard setback of 5 meters. Detached garage having a setback of 1.2 meters from the rear lot line, whereas section 4.1.17B requires a minimum rear yard setback of 4 meters. And 3, a total lot coverage of 12.49%, whereas section 6.3, column 2, table 6.2 permits a maximum lot coverage of 7%. And subject to the following conditions. 1, that the owner provide a property tax certificate or correspondence from the Township Financial Services indicating that all property taxes have been paid up to date with respect to the property that is subject to this decision. And 2, that the proposed detached garage be substantially and proportionately in conformity with the dimensions as set out on the application and sketches submitted and approved by the committee. And 3, that the appropriate zoning certificate and building permit be obtained within 3 years of the date of decision from the township only after the committee's decision becomes final and binding. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Thank you. The motion is carried and the application is approved. Thank you. Certainly, go ahead, sir.
So we have to move forward now, I believe. Okay. Okay, and how do I show you that we pay our taxes? We have taxes are paid in installments. I know we're up to date now. Okay, that's. Want to know, make sure that I don't miss something. Well, where were you?
Yeah. Okay. Well, your point of contact will be Ms. Wancourt, so she can give you direction on what you need to do.
I believe this for your before I step out of the room. I believe this is what you're looking for. Okay. All right, sir. Thank you very much. Appreciate your recommendations and have a nice day and your fingers crossed.
All right. All right. Thank you for attending today.
Yeah. You're going to need a garage.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Our next application is a minor variance application A24-58 for 94 Island Drive. To the planner, please.
Thank you, and through the chair. Subject property has an area of 0.83 acres with 2 frontages equaling 132 meters onto Gloucester Pool, with private road access via Island Drive. The property currently contains a dwelling, a shed, and a dock. The property maintains areas in their natural state with pockets of clearing and built form. The proposed area of development is for the most part cleared, as it's currently being used in part as a gravel driveway extending from Island Drive. In order to develop the property with the detached garage as proposed, a variance is required to address section 4.1.7 of the zoning bylaw. Section 4.1.7 speaks to the minimum yard requirements for accessory buildings. For shoreline residential or shoreline residential island zone lots, the minimum interior side yard requirement for any accessory building is 5 meters. Minimum interior yard setback provisions are intended to create adequate separation distance between neighboring residential properties and to provide efficient space for yard and building maintenance. For non-shoreline residential properties, the minimum separation distance and interior side yard setback for accessory buildings is 2 meters. The minimum separation distance and interior side yard setback requirement increases to 5 meters for shoreline residential properties. The purpose of this increase is to reduce waterfront building and structure clustering, allowing for natural form to remain the predominant feature for shoreline areas. The shape of the subject property is unique, presenting challenges to site a detached garage given the shared private road, the existing building and structures on the property, and the 2 shoreline frontages. The proposed location of the detached garage is the only portion of the property that would offer adequate setbacks to the private roadway, septic system, existing dwelling and accessory uses, and both shorelines. The total lot coverage with all buildings and structures considered is 4.6%, whereas a total lot coverage of 8% is permitted. The proposed detached garage will be well within the maximum size requirements, being 70 square meters in ground floor area, whereas a maximum ground floor area of 112 square meters is permitted, and 3.6 meters in height, whereas a maximum height of 4.5 meters is permitted. The proposed structure will remain subordinate to the detached dwelling on the subject property, as well as those on neighboring properties. The mature vegetation in close proximity to the shoreline, as pictured here, will offer screening of the proposed development from the shoreline. The proposed location of the detached garage will maintain an adequate distance from neighboring property areas of built form, avoiding any concern relating to overcrowding or built form clustering. Further, this overhead provides an idea of the character of the area, being a residential area having multiple accessory uses varying in size and intensity. The committee can either approve or deny the variance being requested. The committee may also defer the application to a later date if additional information is required to come to a decision. Planning staff have completed a detailed analysis of the variance of the zoning bylaw and are being requested, and are recommending approval subject to the conditions. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Secretary, has there been any correspondence in this application?
One letter was received from Kelly Nicholson, chief building official, stating that there could be possible issues with minimum required setbacks from the garage to septic depending on height of septic system above natural existing grade. Setback could be between 5 to 8 meters. And one letter of support was received from Lillian and Ralph Hutchinson.
Okay, thank you. Is the applicant or their agent present, and do they wish to address this application?
Yes. My name is Greg Paul. Thank you. I think Andrew has actually expressed pretty much everything about this. There really is no other place for us to put the garage. Our intent, my wife's and mine, is to make this our permanent residence in the next few years. And we're tired of our cars getting dinged by falling branches.
Okay. All right. If you mind just remain there in case there are any questions that come your way. Is there any member of the public that wishes to address this application? Okay. And we have someone online that wishes to address the committee? Mr. Knight from Island Drive.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, please.
My name's Kurt Knight, owner of Island Drive from the previous application. My wife is actually Erin Knight, not Heather Knight. I'm glad she wasn't on this call. There might be some questions raised. But we are the neighboring property to the Pauls, and we are more than happy to support their application.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Any other member of the public wishes to address the committee? Seeing none, I will close the public portion of the meeting and bring the application before the committee for any questions or comments. And we will begin with anyone with their hand up. And I don't see any hands up or questions. So with that, I will read the resolution. It is moved by Member Schmidt and seconded by Member Predko. Be it resolved that the Township of Georgian Bay Committee of Adjustment approves minor variance application A24-58 to zoning bylaw 2014-75 as amended for 94 Island Drive to facilitate the construction of a detached garage as described below. 1, a decrease in minimum interior side yard setback to 1.2 meters, whereas section 4.1.7a permits a minimum interior side yard setback of 5 meters. The above noted approvals are subject to the following conditions. One, that the owner provided property tax certificate or correspondence from Township Financial Services indicating that all property taxes have been paid up to date with respect to the property that is subject to this decision. And two, that the proposed detached garage be substantially and proportionately in conformity with the dimensions as set out on the application and sketches submitted and approved by the committee. And three, that the appropriate zoning certificate and building permit be obtained within 3 years from the date of decision from the township only after the committee's decision becomes final and binding. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Thank you. The motion is carried and the application is approved.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Paul. Our next application is minor variance application A24-60 for 66 Hemlock Hill. To the planner, please.
Through the chair, the subject property has an area of approximately 5,625 square meters and a frontage of 85 meters. The lands are located at the south end of 6 Mile Lake, accessed via a private road off White Falls Road. A detached dwelling, sleeping cabin, shed, privy, and dock occupy the property. The front yard is dominated by granite rock, while the rear yard contains a clearing with a gravel driveway. Mature trees and dense vegetation are located along the property boundaries. The lands are designated waterfront within the district and township official plans within the 6 Mile Lake Inland Waterfront Community and Zone 6 Mile Lake Residential. The property is within a deer wintering area with extreme wildfire hazard rating, and the shoreline contains type 2 fish habitat. The purpose and effect of the application is to seek relief from the zoning bylaw to facilitate the construction of a detached garage with a height of 5.5 meters, whereas 4.5 meters is permitted. The proposed garage will have a ground floor area of 66.8 square meters and will be 1.5 stories. The garage will be located in the rear yard and requires the removal of a shed. The applicant requires the proposed height to accommodate solar panels and has informed staff that a height of 4.5 meters would require a roof slope that is too low to safely handle snow, putting the solar panels at risk for damage and reducing their efficiency during the winter season. Staff believe the proposed development will not have an impact on the natural heritage and aesthetic integrity of 6 Mile Lake, as there are no significant heritage features on or abutting the subject lands, and the garage will be located in the rear yard. In accordance with the principles of the community, the visual impact of development from the water is an important parameter in maintaining the character of the lake. As supported by photos provided by the applicant, staff believe the garage will not be visible from the water, and if so, will be screened by mature trees and the detached dwelling. The intent of limiting the height of a detached garage is to assist with ensuring that the building remains accessory to the principal building or use on the lot in terms of size, and to reduce any potential negative visual impacts on both neighboring properties and the waterfront. The proposed garage height is less than that of the dwelling and has a smaller footprint. The detached garage will be screened from view by mature trees in the front, rear, and side yards, both on the subject and neighboring properties. The applicant is also proposing increased side and rear yards of 6.25 meters and 14.4 meters, where a minimum side yard of 5 meters and a rear yard of 4 meters is required. Planning staff have completed a detailed analysis of the application as outlined in the associated report and are recommending approval subject to conditions.
Thank you, Ms. Madam Secretary, has there been correspondence on this application?
Certainly. One letter was received from Kelly Nicholson, Chief Building Official, stating that the garage cannot be beneath service line to the house. 2 letters of support were received from Liz Lawrence, Margot Parker, and Frank Longdice.
Thank you. Is the applicant present or online, and do they wish to address the committee? If so, please come up to the microphone and state your name and address for the record.
Hello, Mr. Chair. I'm Catherine Pounder, and this is my husband, Bill Winterhalt.
Very good. And do you have some additional information for the committee regarding the application?
I just forgot what it was you said in terms of the, oh my goodness, I'll maybe think of it.
Okay.
Just to say, it's not our intention to repeat the written information that we submitted. I just wanted to highlight several points so that you get a good idea of what we're planning. First, the cross sections that were in the staff report showed the footprint of our proposed garage, which is about 66 point something square meters. And the bylaw permits 1,128 square meters. The size is roughly, in terms of footprint, 24 by 30, which is equivalent to what our neighbors on either side of us have. But the style of the roof that we're proposing is a shed roof so that we can maximize the roof exposed to the south, thereby maximizing the efficiency of the solar panels. And that's really the reason why we're proposing a minor variance of 1 meter to what the bylaw requires. One of the tests of the appropriateness of a minor variance is whether or not the changes are consistent with the general intent, purpose, and objectives of the official plans that are relevant to the application. And in our report, we've indicated that the PPS, the District of Muskoka official plan, and the Township's own official plan all address the importance of reducing greenhouse gas and addressing the impacts of our changing climate. We would not be building a garage with a shed roof except to facilitate the inclusion of solar on the roof. And so we think that the official plans policies that address solar and alternative energies are relevant to this application. Ontario Hydro's net metering program allows us to produce enough electricity to cover our existing needs. And we get credit for it in the summer when we would be producing the most electricity. And then we can use those credits in the wintertime when we would actually be using more electricity. So it's a win-win, really, a win for the environment and a small win for us, maybe. If you'd like, I can go over the photos that we took in terms of how the vegetation on our site blocks the views. You saw the vegetation, the 2 photos from the water's edge, and really we are densely covered in vegetation, and we've tried to minimize the amount of trees that we will be taking out. Otherwise, if you have any questions, we'd be glad to answer them. We just hope that you'll support the staff's recommendation to approve the application.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Pounder. Is there any member of the public who wishes to address the committee on this application? Okay, seeing none, I will close the public portion of the meeting and bring the application before the committee for any questions or comments. And I just have one quick question for you before we end. Did I understand you correctly to say that you have sufficient solar panels on that building to provide all of your energy requirements for the year?
It would provide enough electricity to match our needs as of today. But if we go to a heat pump, it might not then meet those needs. But then we're spending a lot of money on propane, so to heat the place. Yes.
Okay. Thank you for that. Are there any questions or comments from members of the committee? Okay, I see one hand. Yeah, Member Smith.
Thank you, through Chair Hill. I noticed in the report, and I had an opportunity to have a site visit there this morning early, and boy, the road's got a lot of snow on either sides of that, but I was able to fit through there. As noted on the report, there's significant tree cover on that point, and I assume that the wrapped trees are the ones that are going to be affected by this. Okay. I wonder if, I guess it is what it is. If the direction is more important for hydro consumption or the tree loss, but I did notice there's a significant impact to some very mature, large hemlock trees, hence the name of the road. But I guess that's my caution or comment to the situation, that I don't know which of the worst evil in this application.
Exactly. We've lived there for 14 years without a garage, primarily because I didn't want to cut down any trees. So everybody that knows me knows that I would protect the trees. But we're getting older, and a garage would be nice. You don't have to take the wheels to store under. And we've got a dome of granite under our house so that we have very little storage in the house.
Yep.
The other thing is that if you saw the report from staff and from us, we're getting some benefit of, it's not equivalent, but the CO2 emissions saved are 964 kilograms per year, and equivalent to 29 trees being planted each year. So we're proposing to cut down 12. They're not all within the footprint, but if you saw the snow we have, we've got nowhere to put it. We couldn't get into a garage this winter if we didn't widen that area at the bottom. So that's really part of the problem, and a little bit of the area around. We had an arborist out who recommended that we could save one tree from our initial amount of trees, and we're going to do that. But
thank you.
Okay. Thank you for that. Are there any other questions? I see a hand up from Member Graziano. Please go ahead.
And thank you, through you, Chair Hill. I'm of the belief that if it can comply, it should comply. And I understand that the request is not significant. However, I'm just curious to know whether or not there was a way to ensure compliance with regards to the bylaws rather than coming for a minor variance. So was there any consideration in engineering the roof line to allow for the solar paneling in such a way that it could comply?
Well, there's a couple of ways we could have done it. One is to increase the footprint of the garage, but that would mean that we would have to cut down more trees. The other is to lower the angle of the roof, but again, that would increase the footprint. So we tried to sort of take a compromise between all of those things in terms of the angle, the numbers of trees that were being proposed to cut down, and the location of the garage.
Okay, thank you. Are there any further questions or comments from the committee? Okay, seeing none, I will read the resolution. It is moved by Member Matthews and seconded by Member Predko. Be it resolved that the Township of Georgian Bay Committee of Adjustment hereby approves the following variance requested under minor variance application A24-60. An attached garage having a height of 5.5 meters, whereas section 4.1.15A permits a maximum building height of 4.5 meters, and subject to the following conditions. One, that the owner provide a property tax certificate or correspondence from Township Financial Services indicating that all property taxes have been paid up to date with respect to the property that is subject to this decision. And 2, that the proposed detached garage be substantially proportionately in conformity with the dimensions as set out on the application and sketches submitted and approved by the committee. And 3, that the appropriate zoning certificate and building permit be obtained within 3 years from the date of decision from the township, only after the committee's decision becomes final and binding. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Thank you. The motion is carried and the application is approved. And thank you very much, Ms. Pounder. You had provided lots of valuable information for this discussion. I appreciate it. Yeah. Our next application is minor variance application A24-61 for 9664 Go Home Lake Shore. To the planner, please.
Through the chair, the subject property has an area of 4,383 square meters and a frontage of approximately 70 meters on Blue Lagoon, which is at the south end of Go Home Lake, between the Musquash River and Miners Bay. In 2023, the Committee of Adjustment approved an addition onto the legal non-complying detached dwelling and an extension of the existing deck through minor variance application A23-28. The lands are designated waterfront within the district and township official plans and are zoned shoreline residential type 1. The purpose and effect of the application is to seek relief from the zoning bylaw to facilitate the expansion of a legal non-complying deck and the construction of a new staircase. The proposed expansion is 12.82 square meters and will reduce the front yard from 6.78 meters to 6.46 meters. For applications to expand a legal non-conforming use under subsection 45(2) of the Planning Act, the consideration is to be based upon both desirability for development of the property in question and the impact on the surrounding area. Only the proposed expansion may be evaluated for undue adverse impacts. The intent and purpose of the official plan is not a relevant consideration when applying these tests. In order to refuse the application, the undue adverse impacts of the proposed expansion must be demonstrated by objective evidence and must be sufficient to override the property owner's right to reasonable flexibility, evolution, and expansion. A mature pine tree in the front yard is being retained as opposed to removed, which would otherwise be required to accommodate the longer than anticipated staircase from the deck that would maintain the legal non-compliant setback. To clarify, the previously approved staircase was located at the side of the deck running parallel to the shoreline. The committee can defer the application to a later date if additional information is required to come to decision. However, planning staff have completed an analysis of the application and are recommending approval subject to conditions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Swanford. Madam Secretary, has there been any correspondence in this application?
Yes. One letter was received from Kelly Nicholson, Chief Building Official, stating she has no concerns.
Thank you. Is the applicant present? And if so, please step forward and identify yourself.
Good morning. My name is Victoria Hoffman. I'm here on behalf of Flow Drawings at 3 Violet Drive, Port Severn. This one is pretty straightforward. As Shania said, we were here in August of 2023 for a cottage addition that was approved. We just kind of assumed the grade would not assumed, but we expected the grade to kind of come down a little bit. And once the floor started getting framed, they realized that it wasn't going to work the way that they wanted to, and just in terms of the stairs. They're very attached to that tree in the front, and just also there's a natural, in one of those photos there's a natural kind of path that goes up between the rock ledges, and they just kind of want to keep with that opposed to trying to move the rocks around type deal. So
Okay.
Here to answer any questions.
All right, appreciate that. Is there any member of the public that wishes to address the committee on this application? Okay, seeing none, I'll close the public portion of the meeting, bring the application before the committee for any questions or comments. And seeing none, I will read the resolution. It is moved by Member Predko and seconded by Member Matthews. Be it resolved that the Township of Georgian Bay Committee of Adjustment hereby approves the following variances requested under minor variance application A24-61. The expansion of a legal non-complying structure by 12.82 square meters in the required front yard setback and reduced front yard from 6.78 meters to 6.46 meters, whereas section 4.11A permits the expansion provided that the floor area is not exceeded in the required yard and the front yard is not reduced. An increased projection into the required front yard of 20 meters, resulting in a front yard setback of 6.4 meters from a deck and stairs, whereas 4.20A permits a projection of 4 meters into the required front yard, resulting in a front yard setback of 16 meters. And subject to the following conditions. One, that the owner provide a property tax certificate or correspondence from Township Financial Services indicating that all property taxes have been paid up to date with respect to the property that is subject to this decision. And two, that proposed staircase is substantially and proportionately in conformity with the dimensions as set out on the application and sketches submitted and approved by the committee. And that the appropriate zoning certificate and building permit be obtained within 3 years from the date of decision from the township, only after the committee's decision becomes final and binding. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Thank you. The motion is carried and the application is approved. Thanks, Victoria. Our next application is minor variance application number A25-01 for 2049 Harrison Trail. To the planner, please.
Thank you, and through the chair. The subject property has an area of 1.15 acres with a frontage of 45.5 meters onto 12 Mile Bay, with private road access via Harrison Trail. The lands are for the majority in their natural state, being densely vegetated. The property currently contains a dwelling, a freestanding walkway, and a shore deck. In accordance with section 4.11E3, the height of the legal existing dwelling shall be permitted to increase by 1.5 meters to a maximum of 6 meters based on the height of the legally existing dwelling on the day the bylaw was passed. However, the height of the proposed to increase by only 0.9 meters. The existing dwelling height is 6.27 meters, meaning the proposed height will exceed the 6 meter maximum, being a total of 7.17 meters. The expansion is compliant with all other requirements of the zoning bylaw, being well within the additional legal non-complying dwelling expansion limits as stated in section 4.11E3. The existing dwelling would be permitted to expand in gross floor area to 90.2 square meters. However, the development seeks to increase the size of the dwelling from the current 53.05 square meters to 66.89 square meters. The dwelling width is not proposed to increase at all. The proposal will also see the existing open deck at the front of the dwelling wrapping around the east side of the dwelling, not further encroaching into the front yard setback. The proposed expansion remains well within the maximum lot coverage, increasing the lot coverage to 2.24%, whereas a maximum lot coverage of 7% is permitted. The front facade of the dwelling will not be subject to any major alteration. Again, the proposed development will not expand in width or be encroaching any further into the front yard setback. The aesthetic qualities of the building profile will remain, with the increase in height being the predominant physical change visible from the shoreline. The expansion of the dwelling in the location proposed will not alter the natural aesthetics of the property and will still be in character with the surrounding land uses. Additionally, no visual or environmental impacts to neighboring properties are anticipated due to the location and size of the proposed development. The surrounding vegetation cover will be unaltered, shielding the expansion from the neighboring buildings and amenity areas. The committee can either approve or deny the variance being requested. The committee may also defer the application to a later date if additional information is required to come to a decision. Planning staff have completed a detailed analysis of the variance to the zoning bylaw and are requesting approval subject to the conditions.
Thank you, Mr. Donaldson. Madam Secretary, has there been correspondence in this application?
One letter was received from Kelly Nicholson, Chief Building Official, stating that no septic records will cause issues with obtaining the building permit.
Okay. Is the owner's agent or owner present and wish to address the committee?
My name is Victoria. I'm here with Flo 3 Violet Drive, Port Severn. The owner is also online, but I'm the agent for this application. So from a design perspective, we're just looking to rebuild on the same footprint and then go back a little bit further. We were limited in ways just because there's quite a rock drop behind the cottage. And then when we started looking at the height, the existing walls are only 5 feet on the sides. I think they're like 4'10". And with our stair placement and stuff, we just wanted 6'8" going up to the top, just to make sure that when you get to the top of the stairs, you're not hitting your head. It's essentially all we're asking for is the height of a doorway at the top of the stairs, and then working with the slope ceilings from there. There will be a new septic application coming in once this gets approved. But yeah, here to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. Is there any member of the public who wishes to address the committee on this application? Okay, seeing none, I'll close the public portion and ask, bring the matter before the committee for any questions. I have one quick question for you, Victoria. In order to accomplish the additional ceiling height, do you have to put a new roof on, or can you jack up the existing one?
No, a new roof is going on.
So, and what about the walls?
Well, new walls too.
Is that right?
Yep. Yeah.
It's amazing. It's a lot of work for the additional heights. Okay. Any questions or comments from the committee? Okay. Member Predko, please.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. I just wanted to get confirmation from either Victoria or from our planner. In the report, it mentions that the total floor area is increasing at the rear, and I just haven't been able to see from the images that have been provided how that is being added to the rear, and it's not. I mean, I get the frontage isn't going any closer to the lake, but from the diagrams and the drawings provided, it looks like it's pretty much the same building, just with a slightly higher roof. Is that correct, or am I just missing something in the presentation?
So the original building is 23 foot 9.5 feet deep, and we're adding 6 foot 2.5 on the back.
Okay, it's just not really, we don't really see that in the diagram, that's all. Okay, thank you.
I think if we go to the survey. So the red is the black box is the existing, and then the red is where we're expanding. There's actually currently a walkway there right now, so we're just using that existing walkway, and it's just under 24 feet, and we're going up to 30 feet deep. Pushing it out the back.
Okay, thank you. In the report that color difference wasn't as pronounced as the presentation. Thank you.
Okay. Are there any further questions or comments from the committee? Seeing none, I will read the resolution. It is moved by Member Matthews and seconded by Member Predko. Be it resolved that the Township of Georgian Bay Community of Adjustment approves minor variance application A25-01 to zoning bylaw 2014-75 as amended for 2049 Harrison Trail to facilitate the expansion of a legal non-compliant dwelling as described below. Number one is an increase in maximum height to 7.17 meters, whereas section 4.1E2 permits a maximum height of 6 meters. The above noted approvals are subject to the following conditions. One, that the owner provide a property tax certificate or correspondence from the Township Financial Services indicating that all property taxes have been paid up to date with respect to the property that is subject to this decision. Two, that the proposed dwelling is substantially and proportionately in conformity with the dimensions as set out on the application and sketches submitted and approved by the committee. And three, that the appropriate zoning certificate and building permit be obtained within 3 years from the date of decision from the township only after the committee's decision becomes final and binding. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Thank you. The motion is carried and the application is approved. Thank you, Ms. Huffman. Our next application is minor variance application A25-03 for 2 Island 1780 Georgian Bay. To the planner, please.
Thank you, and through the chair. The subject property is a single ownership island on Georgian Bay with an area of 1.22 acres within the Cognishine coastal waterfront community. The island, for the most part, remains in its natural state with areas of primary and accessory development throughout. The property contains a dwelling, 2 sleeping cabins, a shed, a dock, and a boat port. Although the relocation of the septic fields offers an overall net improvement in terms of proximity to the shoreline, a minor variance is still required to address the relocation as a proposed distance of 18.3 meters from the shoreline, whereas a minimum setback of 30 meters from the shoreline is required. Section 4.26A also lists standards for minimum elevation for leaching bed component of a septic system, being 178.4 meters CGD. Confirmed by Rudy Mack Surveying as per their site visit on October 2nd, 2024, the elevation approximately in the middle of the proposed septic field is 179.22 meters CGD. The purpose and intent of the zoning bylaw requirement is to maintain an appropriate distance between septic systems and water bodies to ensure the location of individual on-site sewage service beds are in the best location for phosphorus management. The zoning bylaw setback requirement exceeds the Ontario Building Code requirements regarding septic system location. Georgian Bay is not considered a sensitive water body, and there are no sensitive environmental features on or surrounding the island or nearby islands. The report distributed to the committee cited policy alluding to the upgraded septic system coming as a requirement for an increased capacity for recent development. After further consultation with the building department, it was confirmed that during the septic reinspection program, the septic system was determined to be undersized to sufficiently service the existing development on the island, being a cottage, 2 sleeping cabins constructed in the 1950s. At that time, the property owners rectified this issue by obtaining a change of use permit to decrease the number of bedrooms in the cottage. As of right now, there are no outstanding or pending orders requiring the property owner to upgrade the septic system or relocate it. The existing system, being located 9.4 meters from the shoreline, is sufficient to service the property as it is and may remain. The property owners wish to relocate and upgrade the septic system as a courtesy for necessary improvement to protect water quality of Georgian Bay. As shown on the site plan, the proposed septic system will be appropriately set back from the cottage and all accessory buildings. The justification behind the relocation of the septic system is the inability to adequately set back the septic field due to lot depth and lot area constraints. The area of the proposed septic field is at the widest portion of the island property, offering the maximum setbacks to each side of the island. Section F.5.10.8.12b of the Township Official Plan states that new individual on-site sewage service systems are encouraged to be located as far back as possible from the shoreline and shall be located a minimum of 30 meters from the high water mark unless it is not physically possible due to terrain features or lot depth to locate the service system at such a distance, and should be located in an area that affords vegetated cover within the setback area. Further to this, Part C of the section states that wherever possible, property owners of existing individual on-site sewage service systems are encouraged to upgrade the existing system to current standards. In this case, the individual on-site sewage service system cannot meet the 30 meters required setback due to insufficient lot depth. The upgraded system will be placed in accordance with current standards and located in an area affording vegetative cover and surrounding shoreline. The septic system will be sited on a portion of the island that is for the majority clear of vegetation. The extents of the system are displayed by the stakes highlighted in red. It is estimated that a maximum of 4 mature trees will be required to be removed for the construction of the system as proposed. Section C2.6.4.2e of the official plan states that a minimum 30-meter setback from any shoreline shall be required for leaching beds. Where this is not feasible, the system shall incorporate soils that have demonstrated ability to effectively retain phosphorus or equivalent septic abatement technologies and on-site phosphorus management and impact mitigation measures in accordance with the standard protection policies of the district plan will be required. The determination of materials used to facilitate the relocation and replacement of septic systems is regulated under the Ontario Building Code. The proposed septic system expansion will be completed by a qualified septic installer under current regulations of Part 8 of the Ontario Building Code with regard to sensitivity of land use within waterfront designations. The committee can either approve or deny the variance being requested. The committee may also defer the application to a later date if more information is required to come to a decision. The variance before the committee today is only the consideration of the setback to the shoreline. Planning staff had completed a detailed analysis of the variance to the zoning bylaw and are requesting approval subject to the conditions. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Secretary, has there been correspondence on this application?
Yes. One letter was received from Kaylee Nicholson, Chief Building Official, stating the proposed increases existing setback as well as updates with the septic system. The proposal will be required to meet the Ontario Building Code. One letter of support was received from Barb, Meg, and Courtney Margatroyd. One letter of objection was received from Tom Bain, stating the property is likely too small, has insufficient natural soil depth, and overburdened to support the needed septic system to support the current development. He recommends holding tanks as it would be less expensive and the ultimate protection to the water environment. One letter of objection was received from Kathy Cooper, stating concerns with a septic tank, a sealed holding tank with an alarm and a pump out contract can be set back further and is much better solution than a septic system which cannot meet the minimum standards which the township and district have prescribed for islands on Georgian Bay.
Thank you very much. Is the applicant present or their representative, and do they wish to address the committee?
Hello, everyone. Excuse me, my name is Jessica Gunby, if you don't know me, and I am the agent for the property owner and applied for this application on their behalf. And I just have a few things to add, and also in response to a couple of things from the letters that we were sent. The information I have that was on the application also about the system is that it will be class 4, 21 by 21 bed with a 6,000 liter tank. Any additional information about the septic will be provided to staff during building permit application if this is approved. The staff report states that the upgraded septic system comes as a requirement to increase capacity for recent development, but I just want to clarify that there have been no additions. There's been no recent development other than in my discussions with the contractor and the owner that they have repaired some footings, and Cody was on site doing inspections for that, and they discussed this possible new septic. The owner plans on adding a bathroom into one of the bunkies, and that's the main point of the upgrading of the system and the fact that it's from the 70s and it currently does not comply. So again, there's no additions being planned, no changes to any current footprint, and the information like materials being used and engineered plans will be supplied at the time of the building permit, as will the application for additional plumbing fixtures.
Thank you, Ms. Gunby. Is there any other member of the public or the president that wishes to, or the public rather, that wishes to address this? I would ask you that you turn on the microphone and give us your name and address.
Mr. Chairman, my name is Thomas Bain. I'm a registered professional engineer, and I'm here representing the Eastern Georgian Bay Protective Society, which is an environmental group which is, again, aims are to protect the water and land.
Welcome, Mr. Bain.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I have been involved in testing, or rather sampling and testing the waters of southeastern Georgian Bay, particularly Honey Harbor and Cognisheen, for almost 30 years. Back in the late 90s and early 2000s, I saw a significant decrease in the quality of the water. And as a consequence, in 2012, I put forward a presentation in this room to council to increase the setback for septic systems for not only the tank but also the bed, and ensure that the elevation was appropriate. When bylaw 2014-75 section 4.26 was drafted, there were a number of little errors in that, whereby the shoreline was mentioned, but not the high water mark. And through the OMB, we got that corrected so that the setback from the high water mark was 30 meters, and the elevation from the high water mark was 1 meter in all areas except where there was significant open water fetch, in which it was increased to 1.5 meters. So that would have been 178.9 in open fetch areas. Following that, we saw significant increase in the water quality as a consequence of the increased setback. This is a collective problem involving many systems over many years. So we know that having a setback of 30 meters is very effective in controlling the water quality, as well as having a proper elevation so that the septic bed is not saturated with water from wave action. I'm not sure whether you received a copy of my report. However, what has been proposed does not comply with the official plan of the District of Muskoka. It doesn't comply with the official plan of the Township of Georgian Bay. It does not comply with bylaw 1475, section 4.26. And based on the information that I have, I'm not even sure that it will comply with the building code, because there's no indication that the discharge required by the building code for BOD5, CBOD5, and TSS will be achieved. We have had other similar circumstances to this in the township. Specifically, I'd refer to a situation that came up in 2019 for 2 Island 20, which is Sawdust Island. You can see it from the highway here. The owner of the property did some building without a building permit. This was brought to the attention of the township. The township went in and found that a new septic system was required to support the building. It was determined that the island was too small, okay, to accept a new septic system in compliance with not only the building code, but also bylaw 1475, section 4.26. And it was recommended by the township at that time. In fact, the variance there was only a couple of meters. In this particular case, I believe it's about 14 meters. But it was only a couple of meters, and it was decided that in the best interest of the environment and the water, that holding tanks would be recommended. And holding tanks were in fact installed, and the owner of the property actually was really quite happy about it, because it meant that he did not have to cut down any trees. He did not have to deface his property, and his cost was about a quarter of what it would have been to put in the septic system. So he was very pleased. Based on the information that I have received for the proposed system, while the location of the septic tank has been provided, the calculations for its needed capacity have not been provided. Ms. Gunby, I heard, said it was a 6,000 liter tank, but I hadn't heard that before. While the location, the dimensions of the leaching bed have been provided, the calculations for its needed size have not been provided. While the location and dimension of the natural drain field have been provided, no information on its depth or capacity has been provided. No information has been provided on the materials to be used in the leaching bed. However, that with respect to gravel or sand, I did hear from Ms. Gunby that they were considering using special sand. No test pits.
If I could interrupt you a little bit, Mr. Bean.
Sure.
The technical, you're getting into the technicalities of the construction of the septic bed, and that's not in the purview of the Committee of Adjustment. So just so we're clear, what we're talking about.
I understand. I
All right,
understand.
well, let me finish, please. The reason for the application today is to address this setback. You know, there's an existing septic system there now, and the applicant is coming to the Committee of Adjustment to request a septic system in a different location. And so that's really what the question is on the table. The intricacies of how that septic system is constructed and how it's built is again under the jurisdiction of the building department, and we have representatives here from the building department that might address those any concerns that come up. But it's certainly not what we're here today to discuss as the Committee of Adjustment. So is there anything in regard to the location or the moving of the septic vent that the committee should be aware of, perhaps, that are not?
It would be my opinion that allowing the reduced setback would not be consistent with the idea of protecting the water in Georgian Bay, and this is a collective matter. It's not just one system you let go. It's a collective of all the systems. So what we found in our water testing, in fact, this last year, was that the water actually had improved significantly as a consequence, we believe, of increased setback for septic systems and better care of septic systems. So I would ask that this particular application be denied on the basis that it won't sufficiently protect the environment. And secondly, I would be most concerned that if the new septic system were allowed, that more development on the island might take place based on the increased size. And this would be not in the best interest of the water.
Okay. Well, I appreciate you coming, and I would appreciate you staying where you are because there may be some questions sent in your direction as we proceed. But as I mentioned before, we're not into technical discussion on the construction of the septic tank, but more about authorizing a relocation of the existing septic tank. So,
if I could just interject one more little bit of information. The Eastern Georgian Bay Protective Society is currently investigating a small island in Honey Harbor where a septic system was installed in 2022. And this septic system was a small system. It was big enough to support a 2-bedroom cottage. And but it was being used to support the output from 130 liveaboard boats. It was a commercial situation. We measured, before the septic system was put into operation, we measured the surrounding areas for phosphorus. And we found that
Just going to clarify sort of to what extent this is a commercial septic system that's under the regulation of the MECP, not the township.
Yeah, I was going to ask how this would apply.
I understand that.
Okay.
However, in measuring this in 2023, we found that the background level in Georgian Bay around this island had increased from 11 micrograms per liter to 30 micrograms per liter. Last fall, in September, we found that the level had increased to between 50 and 70 micrograms per liter. So this is the consequence of a septic system that's installed, and this one was solved with an ECA under MECP.
Okay, I appreciate your input, but I want to try and stay on track to the
I'm just trying to tell you the
Okay, and please, I will come back to you if there are questions that I would like your input on.
Thank you, Mr. Hill.
All right, and just so that we are on track, there were a number of questions that came up during the discussion of this application that have to do with the technical construction of the septic system, which hasn't even been brought before, nor is it appropriate to bring it before the Committee of Adjustment. But I did ask the chief building official to attend today in case it was appropriate to have a discussion around the construction of that septic system. So I would ask Ms. Nicholson if you would provide the committee with a little clarification as to what we're talking about today as opposed to, where the building permit process falls into this operation. So please go ahead.
Through you, Chair. Just on a couple of notes. Development everywhere is a two-part process. So obviously you need to either obtain a zoning certificate for approval, or if you can't make that, you go for your Planning Act approval, which is like why we are here today. Once you obtain planning approval, it does not guarantee you a building permit. You still have to meet the requirements of the Ontario Building Code. The Ontario Building Code for septics clearly lays out how it is to be designed. In septic systems where there is a case of rock, or what we like to call a T-time of 50, what is required is a large, very large loading area. So this means that the owner would be importing a large amount of soil to the property to ensure that it is being treated properly as required. If the owner in the proposal cannot meet these requirements, they do not get a permit. It boils down to that. Now, the existing system was installed in the 70s, late 70s, I do believe. It is a legal system approved by the MOE at the time, and they could legally apply to replace that system. I don't think anybody in this room would enjoy a septic system that's 9 meters from the water. So at large not, we would prefer the septic to move back to the best location on the island. Preferably an upgraded system, new, as well as an increased loading area that's added on that island, which would not be in place today.
Okay, thank you for that. And just to clarify that, there was a couple of points that you made. One, we talked about already, in that the design and construction of this is not in the purview of the Committee of Adjustment.
Correct.
But, did I understand you to say that the existing septic tank would be allowed continued use?
Yes, that system is not failing, and if it was, they could legally apply to have it replaced. And I wanted to comment on one of Mr. Bain's other comments. The building code is very restrictive on holding tanks. They do not want them used. Obviously, I understand from certain perspectives, because your effluent is being locked in and tamed there and then pumped out and traveled by boat. Completely understandable. But it only allows them when there's no other option. So if legally they would like to spend the money to install a septic system that meets the Ontario Building Code, that permit must be issued. We cannot issue them a permit for holding tanks.
A couple of further questions for you then. Was there a building department inspector on site recently to have a look at the existing septic system? And if so, what was their finding?
Well, if need be, I'm going to let Cody Avery explain. Cody was the inspector on site. He was the one who conducted the septic reinspection, and he has been dealing with the property owners and their contractor.
Okay. And your name, sir?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. It's Cody Avery, and I'm a building inspector with the building department.
Okay. And what were your findings when you were on site?
So I was on site this past summer for our septic reinspection program, which consists of essentially looking at older septic systems to ensure that there's no signs of failure. When I was on site, I did inspect and looked at the current septic system that's in place right now, the one that's referenced to at 9 meters from the high water mark. There was no signs of failure with that system at the time. There was some other issues on the property in relation to construction that was being undertaken that required a building permit. I know there's been some conversation about development that was done. There was no additional development as mentioned. There was just some structural work that was being done to an existing building. So conversations on site with the contractor, and furthermore with the owner and their consultants. The owners opted obviously to try to better that septic system. And that's why we're here today, obviously. I did do an additional site visit as well with a septic designer that's put together some of the information, I would assume, with the consultants here for the proposed system that's before you today. And that site visit that I had with that septic designer was essentially a preliminary inspection to have a discussion with the designer to understand if a septic system would even be able to come or install on that property. And based on that inspection, obviously without seeing a survey and sort of some concrete information to allow us to make a decision, it was discussed on site that there would be a potential for a general filter bed septic system to be installed on that property. So that's why the owners are here today to proceed with planning act approvals.
Okay, so you were there more than once, and you had an engineer from the septic system design company in attendance with you the second time around.
That's correct. I was there more than once, and to confirm, it was a septic designer installer, a BCIN qualified septic installer, not an engineer.
Yeah. So does the result of that is the findings of that septic designer need to meet some criteria that are set up by the township before you can proceed?
That's correct. Yeah. At this point, we've received no application for the septic system. That's a follow-up to an approval from a planning act end of things. And once we receive a full, complete application, the township will do a review to make sure it's in conformance with Part 8 of the Ontario Building Code.
Okay, and is the township building department the final approval on the installation of the septic system?
That is correct.
Okay.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, can I just,
Sure.
one more piece of information. Prior to the permit being issued, we actually do another inspection. If required, obviously, Mr. Avery's been there, but normally with most septic systems, we require test holes. I think that was brought up in part of the correspondence before, but we do go to site, and that way we can determine if the tea time that they've put on their application is correct. So we make sure that it is designed.
The
Just,
tea time?
it's the way that everything goes through the soil, what's natural there. So if there's not, then obviously it's big, and that's what means they have to import a lot more soil for a loading area.
Oh, I thought it was golf tea time. Okay, all right. Well, thank you for that clarification. And this is all preemptive to bringing the matter before the committee for any questions or comments. And I see a couple of hands up, and shall we begin with Member Matthews?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just to Ms. Wade, did you not receive a letter from Mr. John Carson from Georgian Bay Association? Should have been, I think it was forwarded by me from Mr. Jarvis to you.
I do recall that, and as you say this, it is not on the listing.
Okay, so there's one more letter of rejection.
There is one more.
It should be noted.
And could you give us a little background on Mr. Carson? Is this some way that
Mr. Carson is the past president of the Georgian Bay Association. He's currently the co-chair of the Vision 2050, which is trying to develop a white paper for development up and down the shores of Georgian Bay to protect the waters and the environment of Georgian Bay. I'll also say that the GBA held a president's meeting in November, and we had 18 associations all the way up the shore, a full day of discussion, and we boiled down the three main things that everybody on Georgian Bay is worried about: development, water, and Indigenous rights. So to me, this application covers two of the top key issues. But I also have a question. Somebody said the existing septic tank was 9 meters away, and I look at the survey and I see it at 15.9 meters.
I do believe the septic field itself is 9 meters, not the tank.
Okay, because that doesn't show up here where the field is.
I think it is.
Or
Can
that
you
I
bring
can
it
see.
up?
Oh,
and Member Matthews.
oh, 9 meters that way. Okay, sorry, I was looking at the other way. So
what was the content of the John Carson letter?
he would recommend denial.
And for any given reason? Or?
Because it doesn't meet the Ontario Building Code. It's not 30 meters back, I believe, and it's only 18 meters. Right?
Okay, so again, we're talking about the matter that's before the committee, which is location.
Location.
And the moving of it.
Yeah.
And just so we're all clear on this, I'm going to go back to our chief building official. And maybe you would, there's a question here about the whether it is appropriate to relocate the septic system on that island. You know, we've got the situation where the zoning bylaw requires a setback which can't be met because the island's not big enough. So an alternate location to where it is now, that is the increase in the setback from the shore, is that acceptable to the building department? And I guess it would have to be the planning department as well.
Correct, because the building code does have setbacks, but they are lesser than what is required in our zoning bylaw. Our zoning bylaw is applicable law. That is why we're here before you. If that 30 meters wasn't in here, we wouldn't be here. And the actual setback in the building code is to the water. So the other good thing about the zoning bylaw, as we were talking before, especially on Georgian Bay, is it has that set elevation, because we all know Georgian Bay goes up and down. So the building code is to the water. So at least we now, we've had for years the 177.4, which gives us an elevation to set it back from. So even on top of that, it's set back further.
So we're well above the 177.4?
18.3 meters, I think, is what it says on that.
Which takes precedence? I'm sorry, let me just fit one question. Which takes precedence, the building code or the municipal zoning bylaw?
The zoning bylaw is applicable law, so we have to meet that prior to issuing a permit.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, go ahead.
I would.
Your microphone's off.
Hold on, sorry, there was too many microphones on. I only received one piece of correspondence from Member Matthews, which was included, and it was not from that individual. So I don't know where that email is, but I don't have it. It did come from him when I scrolled down, but it contained Mr. Bain's statement, not from someone else. So, which we did have already. Also, there are members of the public who wish to speak, and we kind of bypass.
All right, I understand there's members of the public that wish to speak to this application. So before we get any further, I would ask if we have someone online who wishes to speak to this application, please identify yourself or raise your hand. Okay, we have a Peter Cooper online. Please go ahead, Mr. Cooper.
Thank you, Mr. Hill. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, but we can't see you.
I'm hiding. But as long as you can hear me, you can probably verify that it is me.
Go outside for a pee.
Anyway, just a quick question. I'm glad that we had some clarity on the OBC versus all applicable law. I heard on more than one occasion that we had to comply with the OBC, but in fact, we always have to comply with all applicable law, which includes the OP, the zoning bylaws, the District of Muskoka, etc. So I just wanted to make sure that we clarified that. The other thing I would like to understand, though, is the second meeting that our bylaw had with the septic operator, installer. When was that? When did you go for that meeting? I would like to know. I'm hearing a lot of visitations this morning when they're in the middle of winter and you can't see anything. So I would like to know that it was actually conducted when the ground was able to be seen and the contours. Can you answer that question for me? Thank you.
Through the chair to Mr. Cooper, that site visit, the secondary site visit with the septic designer was in the fall. So to confirm, it was not snow covered and the ground was visible and thawed.
Thank you for that, and congratulations on doing it when you can actually see the ground. Well done. Good idea.
Your microphone is off, Member Graziano.
Oh, sorry, I didn't Didn't hear my name called. I apologize. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes, go ahead.
Fantastic. So I have a quick question, and perhaps it's outside of the jurisdiction of Committee of Adjustment. But given that this has been, the applicant is requesting that this matter or this septic system be pushed back, and I agree with I think comments made here that the further back it goes, the better it's going to be for all. I wonder, and again, it could be a question more specific to once this is passed, what will be required. But has any additional measures for the septic system, any additional means in which to purify the nutrients that would flow out of the septic system be considered for this application? Have they, on record, said that they would be considering an additional step or phase that would make it better? Over to you. Thank you.
Okay.
Over to staff.
I got that. Again, I'm back to what we were saying earlier. We're not talking about the technical construction of the septic system. We're talking about the setback here. So, in quick answer to your question, as been mentioned earlier, that discussion would take place between the building department if the applicant applies for a building permit.
And fair enough, Chair Hill. The concern that I have is that for me to consider the setback, I need to consider all information, and I think that that's where my question arises from is by having perfect information, and that'll allow me to determine whether or not I support this or not. And having imperfect information, perhaps will change my calculus. Thank you.
Just to briefly answer that question through the chair, the section mentioned in the report, C2.6.4.2E, speaks to the requirement to have the system incorporate soils that demonstrate ability to effectively retain phosphorus and equivalent septic abatement technologies. So that'll be a requirement when installing the septic system. I'm not sure if maybe Jessica can speak further to if that is incorporated in their design yet. I'm not even sure if they're in the official design stage at this point.
If it's okay with you, through you, Mr. Chair, the applicant and the contractor are not at that stage at this point. We were just waiting to see if the approval was granted here before entering into any of that work with the design, which would be presented again at the building permit stage.
Okay, appreciate that.
And through the chair, just if I may, just for everybody's clarification as well, if this does move forward and gets passed at the time, generally what has happened in the past with other septic systems that have gone down this route and required the reduced setback, those requirements are actually in the zoning certificate themselves, so that when we get the proposal, that we're aware that that needs to be met. And if we're not happy, no permit is issued until we are sure that those conditions of this are met.
Okay, appreciate that. Mr. Bain, you had a quick comment?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for acknowledging me. Unfortunately, a lot of the information that has come up today was not available to me when I wrote my report, and this is unfortunate. But it seems to me that the owner of this property is trying to do the right thing by replacing the septic system with a new septic system. But I think that the key point here is development, and member Matthews mentioned that on the Georgian Bay Vision program, development is the #1 item. So it seems to me that if the septic system is simply to replace the existing system with a new system, as long as there is no further development on the island, I think that would be acceptable. If that condition could be put on a decision that if the septic system be accepted, but no further development could be made, I think that would be acceptable in protecting the environment and the water.
Okay, I'll have to go back to our planner, or I see our director of planners here as well. Is it appropriate, or has there been any discussion about future development when you're approving an application?
Through the chair, there has been no discussion of future development. As I've said in the report, they're doing it to better the situation that's currently on the property. They do not intend to build any future development.
And just to further that question, if after the, if this went forward, after that, if there was any development required or requested on the property, that would have to come back to planning and building department for approval. Is that correct?
To the chair and to the committee, that is correct. But to be clear, that would be for any, if there was a proposal for future development, and if that future development did not meet the zoning bylaw, it would be before this committee. And of course, any future development would be subject to a building permit.
Okay. Does that answer your question a bit better? All right. I see a hand up from Member Predko. Please go ahead.
Thank you. And through you, Chair, I don't want to go over too much what other people have talked about. I had a kind of a list of questions, but I think we've covered off most of them. The one thing that I just wanted to ask, and it would probably be back through to Ms. Nicholson, and there was the discussion about having to bring in soil to give adequate coverage so that the tea times were slowed down. Would there be a risk of a site alteration concern if there's, how much soil would be necessary to cover? And I know you don't have that information yet, but is there any kind of point at which you couldn't bring in enough soil to make the septic system work in a way that would be efficient given the setback?
Through you, Chair, Mr. Predko. First and foremost, septic installation is exempt from our site alteration bylaw, so there is no issues there. Part of their application process will be proving that they have the area to import the required loading area and that it can be retained, that it's not going to actually wash into the lake. So that's all kind of part of the application process to ensure that that septic meets building code.
And then the last question that I would have be a combination of perhaps the planner and Ms. Nicholson, wouldn't there be any benefit to a condition for site plan control? But I guess given that it is strictly within the building department purview, you really already have site plan control in this matter.
Through the chair, the instances where we usually see site plan control for something like this would be if there's some sensitive environmental features nearby where we would require additional studies to be incorporated. In this case, if the minor variance were to be approved to the values as set out before you, they would come to us through the zoning certificate to ensure those values are maintained through to the building permit stage. So in this case, we didn't see any it being necessary for a site plan control.
Okay, thank you. I think that covers my questions.
Thank you. Member Schmidt.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to touch on, as I'm looking at the site plan, and I absolutely respect, the care and importance that we have to have for our waters that we are, stewards of here. But I look at a situation where, cutting to the point, we are coming up with nothing but a net improvement that this applicant is applying for. We're increasing setbacks from a 1970 system that we know will not hold a candle to the new system that's going to be put in on that property, which will further protect. And if there's somebody in this world that wants to put a holding tank on an island that is going to save money today, but bleed for the rest of their existence, this is the smartest application. And if it ends up having to be a Waterloo biofilter system so it meets the regulations to protect the water through the building code, drive on. I think this horse is somewhat dead on this topic, I would hope. This makes sense.
Okay, thank you very much. Member Matthews?
Thank you. If I may just finish, and there's been so many numbers floating around, Kelly, I hope you can help me here.
Yeah, a lot here.
The Ontario Building Code says 30-meter setback.
No, that's the zoning bylaw. That's why they're here before you today.
Okay.
Minimum for a filter bed is 15 meters from water, but that would be if it was fully dug in the ground. The higher it is from the ground, the greater that setback increases.
Right. So even if it was the Ontario Building Code, we don't quite meet it, but the zoning bylaw supersedes the building code, correct?
Correct. This is the issue. If you grant them this variance today and they still don't meet building code, they don't get a permit. So you're kind of looking at two different things. But
well, now you're really confused.
Okay.
So,
They have.
so let's
Yeah.
say hypothetically we approve this. They come to you. It has to be, according to you, the building code says it has to be 20 meters from the.
No, it depends on the design. So we have to look at the design.
Okay.
But 18 meters generally should be a fully raised system out of the bed, but we're not sure until we see the actual design of the system.
Right. So I have to comment that, on the surface, this seemed really scary and water protection, and I appreciate Mr. Bain's continued support of clean water. And I happen to be familiar with the island. There is not much place to put anything on unless you're a billy goat on this island. So whilst, as I say, on the surface, a 30-meter setback to 18 meters sounds scary, I would go along with my learned colleague, Mr. Schmidt, that I think there's a net improvement on this property, and appreciate that the owners are prepared to spend several tens of thousands of dollars to make this right. Thank you, Mr. Hill.
Thank you very much. A final comment from Mr. Bain.
Yes, sir. I listened to our chief building inspector, Ms. Nicholson, talk about bringing in special sand and with interest. With climate change and heavy rainfall, these septic beds with special sand, everything that's in the bed gets released into the water. And we know that from the last several years of testing, that not only pathogens like E. coli, but also heterotrophic bacteria, which is normally occurring bacteria on the earth, gets washed into the water. Ms. Nicholson spoke about the tea time, okay? The tea time in the building code for a granite rock is 50. In fact, it is infinite. There's no tea time for granite rock. And in this situation is with heavy rainfall, whatever is in that septic bed is going to be washed into the water. So given that, and I appreciate the fact that the owners of the property are trying to make the situation better, okay? But I think that it's important that they understand that there can be no further development on the property. And I think this needs to be part of the decision. I would go along with the member's suggestion that it's an improvement, but it can't be used for further development. Thank you, sir.
Well, and thank you very much, Mr. Bain, for attending. And please remember that all of us here in the township appreciate all the work that you put in to help protect our water resources and protect the integrity of this township. So appreciate you taking the time to come in this weather to provide us with more information, and please continue to do so. With that, if there are no further questions or comments, I will read the resolution. It is moved by Member Schmidt and seconded by Member Matthews. Be it resolved that the Township of Georgian Bay Committee of Adjustment approves minor variance application A25-03 to zoning bylaw 2014-75 as amended for 2 Island 1780 Georgian Bay to facilitate the replacement of a septic system as described below. And that is to decrease a decrease in the minimum shoreline setback to 18.3 meters, whereas section 4.26A allows for a minimum shoreline setback of 30 meters. And the above approval is subject to the following conditions. One, that the owner provide a property tax certificate or correspondence from the Township Financial Services indicating that all property taxes have been paid up to date with respect to the property that is subject to this decision. And two, that the proposed septic system be substantially and proportionately in conformity with the dimensions set out on the application and sketches submitted and approved by the committee. And three, that the appropriate zoning certificate and building permit be obtained within 3 years from the date of decision from the township only after the committee's decision becomes final and binding. All those in favor, please indicate by raising your hand. And the motion is carried and the application is approved. Thank you very much, everyone. I have yet another resolution that is moved by Member Rivet and seconded by Member Matthews. Be it resolved that the Township of Georgian Bay Committee of Adjustment does now adjourn at 12:02 p.m. until March 7, 2025 at 10 a.m. or at the call of the chair. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Thank you, everyone. The meeting is now adjourned. It's not a real dog.